In The Laughing Policeman, a bus full of innocent people are left dead, among them an off-duty detective who is investigating an old case. This thriller stars Walter Matthau and Bruce Dern, and it presents his story in a methodical and procedural fashion. So let's take a closer look. Welcome everyone to the Collector's Cut. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
This is a residential neighborhood.
This is a movie podcast, and we are working through 70s thriller season, and we are on our fourth episode of the season today, I think. Not that it matters.
Yes.
It's not a franchise, doesn't matter how many we're in, but we're doing a movie today from 1973 called The Laughing Policeman. This was the winner of one of a couple of votes we've had on Patreon for this season. We had 3 options up, and this was the one that edged out the other 2. So, didn't really know a whole lot about this. I mean, the votes in general were kind of stuff that were a bit more like, the other ones we're doing are names I recognize. These ones are a bit more sort of digging deep, trying to find something a little bit more interesting, something a bit more under the radar. So we'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers, and if you're enjoying the show on YouTube, please do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch if you do. Same with giving us 5 stars on a podcast app. Wherever you're listening to us, helps us out a bunch there. And of course, you can support us financially over at patreon.com/mailfuzztv and get some bonus stuff, but I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So I mean, this movie starts off with a pretty big bang. It's about a murder that takes place, but the murder involves shooting up an entire bus full of people. And, just like, it's effectively, I don't want to say the phrase because YouTube might demonetize us for using that phrase, but it's effectively a mass usage of a gun. So so that's effectively how the movie starts, and then Walter Matthau plays the lead role, and his partner's played by Bruce Dern, who I didn't even recognize at first because he's got a mustache, and I was like, he's obviously kind of young, relatively speaking, in this compared to what I'm used to seeing him as. So right, but that's our main pair, and they're investigating the crime, and there you go. That's your thriller. So that is The Laughing Policeman. We'll obviously get into it in a little bit, but I assume you hadn't heard of this one.
Not at all. I had no idea what this one was. Even going into it, I was the only thing that the poster and like stuff on Wikipedia gives is it apparently had a marketing campaign about how real it feels. Like that's the thing that's on the poster is like, this movie feels so real that it's gonna put everything else to shame. And it's like, okay, you're setting some rather high expectations there, but we can see how far it goes. But beyond that, it doesn't tell you anything about plot, characters, anything at all. It's a real movie.
Yeah, the actual quote in the poster that you're referring to is that it will make other movies look like just movies. That is the phrase they actually put in the poster, which definitely caught my eye when I was getting the posters for the vote up. I guess we'll just get into it and see how we feel. David, what did you think of The Laughing Policeman?
So I'm going to open this with a little bit of an admission here.
Oh.
I watched this
blindfolded.
Last night. Yes. may as well have been. I was coming down from a bit of a fever, bit of a cold. So I gave this movie as best of my attention as I could. I recognize that I did not give it 100%. I was a little bit just groggy for the most part. However, I feel like I engaged with the movie enough to qualify to say the following phrase, and that is, this is the most meandering movie I feel like I've seen in a long time. Like, don't get me wrong, it's got good qualities to it, and I think that as we get towards the back half of the movie, and it starts like really focusing in on what it wants to do, there are good moments to it, but like, so much of this, I wasn't sure if it was just me having a fever dream or whatever, but I'm like, why are we, did I miss the part where any of this matters? It feels like it's just doing a bunch of random stuff for an hour and 20 minutes. And then all of a sudden they're like, okay, yeah, but here's like the main plot for the last 40. And I'm like, it's interesting in the ways that it handles individual scenes. I think each scene is handled well, but the overarching plot is so hog wildly meandering. I couldn't get into it. It was immediately kicking me out every time I tried to. So wasn't a huge fan of it overall.
I thought the opening like sequence, right? The opening build up to the crime itself, how that all played out, I thought was pretty good. And I was like, oh, this is setting me up. I'm into this. There's a nice bit of build up and sort of teasing the suspense, and then the crime happens. It feels quite violent and brutal. It feels like a dark crime. And then the investigation starts. And from that point on, I have to admit I was pretty painfully bored for the vast majority of this movie. And when it finally does focus itself for, I mean, it's not even the last 40, it's like the last 20 minutes of the movie, to be honest.
Yeah, I was being charitable.
I was like, okay, you know what? You've done such a poor job of like making any of this feel like... It doesn't have any interest in setting things up to make them intriguing or engaging. The way it throws out like things that it's going to get to in just like sort of casual ways, I guess it's more realistic if that's what it's going for, but goddamn, is it not engaging as a movie? I was like, over an hour of this movie is just various cop characters. A lot of it's the main two, but there's also a third cop who is very heavily used in the first half of the movie, but then seems to just disappear for the back half. And that's the black cop played by Louis Gossett Jr. He just he's like heavily featured in the first half, and it's playing into a lot of themes that it wants to get to. Because this movie feels like this weird hodgepodge of like old school slow burn like realism detective stuff, but it's also like, oh, but it's the 70s now, so we're going to tackle like how much sex there is in like San Francisco. Right. We're going to tackle racial issues in San Francisco. We're going to do these things, and I genuinely don't know how much it has to say about any of it, or if it's just like, no, this will make it feel gritty and real because we've got all these things. We're talking about a gay bar at one point, everyone. There's a gay bar in San Francisco, believe it or not.
There's an extended sequence of this where they really do get into this idea of the race relations, of the idea of like you have a black cop and a white cop, and like how the white cop comes in and he kind of just stirs up trouble. He just is kind of looking for someone to do something because he's just looking for something to like have happen in order to forward his case here. But it doesn't go with it. It doesn't do anything with it. It's there for the sequence. And then it's like, okay, well, that's not the focus of the movie. Moving on.
Yeah. And again, this character, the black cop, Larimore is his name. He just like, did I miss something? Is there a reason why he's just absent for the entire last half of the movie? He just disappears and we never see him again. It's weird. The only thing I can think of is I think the last time we see him is basically after that race relation scene, and he talks to the white cop and it's basically like, hey, that wasn't cool. If you and I ever come down here again, we're gonna have some trouble. And then he disappears. So maybe it's a thing where he didn't want to work with the cops anymore, but the movie does not paint the white cop as the bad guy there. It doesn't paint him as someone we should not be trusting for the rest of the movie. It paints him as essentially the partner to our main cop the whole rest of the time. Yeah. And, you know, it does things early on where it sets up a little bit of the private life of our main cop character, played by Matthau, Jake, where, you know, it's like, okay, this is what his marriage is like right now. This is what his kids are like. I'm like, okay, it's setting up a certain type of character. We'll get to this in spoilers, exactly what we're talking about here, but like, it's setting up a certain type of character. You can maybe see what the arc's going to be, or at the very least, you can maybe see what type of person he is, and that plays into how he's going to tackle the case. Because after all, a lot of these thrillers that we've done so far have been, in some levels, turned out to be character studies. I think, you know, both French Connection and Clute very much turned out to be that. They were character study films of their main characters. I don't think this is. I think this movie sets a couple of those things up, and then it just does not matter. Like, the only one it kind of sticks to a little bit is this idea that he doesn't really give his partner. Like you know, he doesn't really let him in on what he's doing. He just kind of treats him as baggage, and the partner notices this. And they do kind of have like a culmination of that at some point. But even that, I kind of felt like it didn't, I don't know, like, it's almost like they went out of their way in the writing of this movie to like, we're not going to do any like screenwriting things. We're not going to do anything that movies do because we want this to feel, like you say, real. But and it's not like it's like this like shambles of a movie where, you know, it's not like someone who doesn't know what they're doing wrote a script, and it's, you know, that this feels like someone who knows how a script's supposed to function but tried to avoid all of the rules of script writing.
Yeah, I think it's really a twofold problem. The first of which is, as you said, it feels like all of these things that they're showing around San Francisco, there's, you know, a constant theme of like drug use, sex, this racial profiling stuff. It's supposed to feel really gritty. It's supposed to feel really down to earth, but it doesn't feel any more gritty than like any other movie we've watched this season. So to say that this is the real, like, oh, this is the stuff you're not going to see in any other movie, feels completely disingenuous. And then on the other side of it, it does feel like an investigation, but only in so much as, like you're saying, it ignores the screenwriting thing of most times we get a police thing, we're usually on the right track for most of it. Or if there is a red herring, the idea that it's a red herring is like very clearly like brought up and said like, oh, we've been chasing our tails. We've done this whole thing the wrong way. This movie spends over half its time following like 6 different leads. We go through all these different ways of like, who could this possibly be? And by the time we finally lock down onto a path, it doesn't feel like any of those other leads contributed anything to the story. And that makes it just feel, again, more real. And that's how a police investigation would actually be, but so much less rewarding from a story standpoint because half of your time was wasted doing other stuff.
And honestly, there's no through line to it. There's no one thing leading to the next. It's just like scene after scene of 1 or 2 detectives going to a person and interviewing them. Maybe it's the brother of one of the victims on the bus. Maybe it's the, you know, the spouse of someone. Maybe it's some like gun dealer or something that might know something about something. And to be honest, there was times where I would like get halfway through a scene and I'd be like, wait, who are these people again? Why did they come to talk to these people? Because there's not like a natural through line to like why they go to the next person. Like, I'm not saying there's no reasons given. I think there's, you know, there's always a line or dialogue or two, like, oh, this is who we're going to go see. But it's never done in a way that feels like it's cohesive. It's like a story that's building to something. It's more just this hodgepodge of different interview and interrogation is a strong word, but mostly interview scenes. And that's like over half the movie. And I gotta be honest, like I was really like I legitimately dozed off at one point and I had to like go back 5 minutes because I just missed 5 minutes of the movie. I need to go back.
Yeah. I was awake. I was feverish, but I was awake. But even then I was like, am I missing something? Is there something in here where I am just like taking micro naps and I'm not understanding the bridge between scenes here?
Now, I gotta say, like the opening scene set me up for, oh, this is a gem. We found a gem. I'm so happy I ran into this movie. And then it just got so boring so fast that I'm like, oh, there's a reason why no one's talking about this typically. Like, it's, you know, if anything, like the 6 point whatever it's got on IMDb might be a little high, honestly. So guys, say huge disappointment. The opening scene set me up for something. There's almost a fun scene at the end, but it's that sort of thing where it's perfectly fine, but the movie's beats like the will to like care out of me over the course of the runtime that it doesn't really matter what they do at the end. I'm still just going to be like overall negative.
Oh yeah.
So
no, I without spoiling anything, I think that the actual like final moment of this movie is such a dud moment.
Oh yeah.
As it like actually ends, I'm like, that's it? What the hell was that?
When it freeze frames and a credit comes up, I was like, what? That's what we're ending on?
Exactly. I thought it was going to do one of those things where it like freeze frames and then like, here's what happened to the characters after the fact. Here's our where are they now sort of thing. But no, we don't even get that much. It's just freeze frame on this character that we have literally never seen before this point. And that's it. That's the end of the movie.
Well, that's not true. We have seen him before.
Have we? All right, fair enough. I guess that's where my micro nap was.
He was around during the first crime scene inspection, and he talked to them in the station a little bit during like the first like 20 minutes. Like he was around early on. I remembered his mustache. If I'm honest, that's why I remember them.
Well, no, there's the mustache guy brought in a suspect, and it freeze frames on the suspect.
Oh, sure, okay, I know what you're saying now. Okay, yeah, we hadn't seen him before. You're right.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. I don't even know what else to say before we get to spoilers, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll say is for the most of the movie, I wasn't really paying that much attention to the score. There is a chase scene at one point that really gets the like brass going. It's really got like the whole orchestra feel. I did appreciate that. It made the moment feel slightly bigger than the other sequences in this movie, but that's really the only time it stood out to me. Throughout everything else, it's just blending into the background.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, if anything, you could argue that that's maybe the one thing that does work about the, like, not having much score for all the typical investigation stuff that's kind of dull. Like, it'd be nice if those scenes were written more like a movie to enjoy them, but this idea that you go all movie without a score, and then you, or at least noticeably anyway, and then you kick into like a big brassy thing for the showdown, if you will. Like, that does have an effect. It's kind of like having silence for an hour and then blasting music. It hits, you feel it.
Yeah.
Feel it in your veins. I mean, performances are solid. These are good actors that are in these roles. Yeah. I have no qualms about that. It feels like they're all doing a good job. They're all playing the roles they're supposed to play. It feels like this, if anything, this script was probably written with the idea, we're going to let good actors really chew on this material and really play these cops and really get into the, like the curmudgeon of it and all that. Because, Walter Matthau is, that's who he is. He's curmudgeon right from the get-go. And that's his character. But it's not enough. It's just not enough.
Yeah. And I felt like Bruce Dern, and again, I haven't seen a lot of Bruce Dern, especially not this early on in his career, but I was getting some major Joey Pants vibes.
Okay.
Like, can you see that? He just kind of like strikes that same sort of like manic energy level for me. I don't know why.
I don't know if I quite see it.
Right.
And maybe that's just because I'm too colored by like old man Bruce Dern, which, and I could definitely see like little bits of that in here throughout.
All right.
But Joey Pants has got such a unique kind of manic quality to him. Like the voice just isn't quite the same, I guess, and I just can't see it. I can't compare them. But performances are good. The director of this one, Stuart Rosenberg, he has done a couple of big movies. He did Cool Hand Luke, which is a very genuinely good movie, and maybe that's a sign where if you give him a good script. I mean, I don't think he wrote this. No, he did not. This is definitely the era where it's not. I mean, it was not like, I'm not saying there was no writer directors, but I think it was less common to have someone who was writing and directing. It was far more common to have a director who was just directing. So maybe that's just a case. If you give him a good script, he'll turn it into something. But Cool Hand Luke's the big one that sticks out, is having all the praise, and I've seen it, and it is a genuinely good movie. And Out of Lahore is just okay. He did that. He also did Voyage of the Damned, which I've not seen, but it sounds.
It sounds very familiar. I feel like that's one that people kind of talk about.
Yeah, I guess. Oh, I assumed it was a horror movie, but it's not. It's a movie about a ship that goes down. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Max von Sydow, Orson Welles.
Oh, those are very big names. Oh, Faye Dunaway.
Matthau. Yeah, it's got a good cast.
Fair enough. It's not that highly rated, to be fair, so it may not be that great, but it's got a good title. I can't deny that. It's got a good title. All right, spoilers then, I guess. We'll get to the spoilers for.
I mean, as much as we could even spoil this movie, like it's not something that's easily spoiled.
Yeah, but not for good reasons, really. Though it's just there's not much to spoil, and that's why it's hard to spoil. But I mean, we'll get into it, and this might be like one of the shorter reviews we've done in some time.
Yeah.
We'll see if we break a record. But so we're in spoilers, full spoilers from this point on. And like I say, I'll praise the opening, because the opening is very visual. It's like there's this character who's clearly watching, keeping an eye on this other character. But the interesting little twist to it is that the character who's being followed, and they're in like a bus station, and I'll call him the perp, right? Because he's the one who's been followed, right? Because the character's followed turns out to be a cop. We don't know that at the time, but that's what it turns out to be.
Right.
He goes into a payphone and he's like, "Hey, yeah, he's following me." I was like, "Oh, he knows he's been followed. He wants him to follow him. He's a bit nervous about it. Like, he's definitely scared and he's definitely kind of twitchy, but he is definitely working for someone to lure this person somewhere." And that's like, okay, that's a little bit different than just being followed. But all of it's told, other than what he says on the phone, it's all told through, the guy with the newspaper looking at him and the awkward body language. It's all very visual, right? Which is like already so much more engaging than like the majority of the rest of the movie once we get into just the police interview after police interview. But I wanted to praise that, because then when they got on the bus, and there's a neat little moment when the perp gets on the bus and the pursuing cop, he's kind of late, he doesn't get on the bus in time, and this is just because a little hint to show that he really wants him to follow him, because he's the perp presses the button on the bus to make the drivers like stop and open the door. And he gets on. So it's just this little thing. It's like, oh, he really wants him to follow. It's not just that they're going to take advantage of him being followed. It's no. He is supposed to be letting this guy follow him.
Yeah. I appreciate how the scene turned out, but I was kind of frustrated in those initial moments because I felt like it was so like, it's obvious that this cop character, who again, we don't know is a cop, but it's so obvious that he is tailing this guy that it's like, come on, man, is this supposed to be this obvious? You kind of suck at your job here. But like the fact that it was supposed to be this thing where he knew he was followed, I was more accepting of it by the end of it.
Yeah, I think it works. Maybe I'm letting how boring the rest of the movie is like almost like elevate this even more than it actually is deserving of. But I do think once they get on the bus and there's this mysterious character gets on the bus with a bag and sits up the back, and then quite quickly you see them start to assemble a gun, right? Got the black leather gloves on, so there's no fingerprints, and there's a moment right before this character does what he does where the perp who was being followed tries to get up and then turns around and sees him and says, "No, wait, not yet." So clearly he knows what he's going to do, but he thought he was going to get off the bus first. So this mysterious man, the killer, he shoots first the cop. That's the one he's here for. He's here to kill this person. But partly to make it look just some crazy person went nuts and did this, he kills everyone on the bus. Now, it's not a packed bus, but there's a woman sitting next to the cop, which, by the way, the cop sits next to a woman when there's like tons of empty seats. I'm like, you only sit next to a stranger on the bus if it's like the only option. Like, what are you doing? Weird behavior. But I guess he thought it'd make him look less suspicious. Oh, he's sitting next to a woman. Maybe the purple assumed that he's with her or something.
If I was anyone else on that bus and I saw that guy sit down, that would be the most suspicious person on that bus. I'd be keeping an eye on him the whole time.
Yeah, but we see like an old man get shot. There's a couple other civilians scattered around the bus who all get shot. And it does feel brutal. It feels violent. You never see the face of the killer, obviously. You just see the close-ups of the gun, and you see like the people with the squibs going off. And it feels brutal. It does feel quite dark.
I think the reason that it works so well, and the reason, like you're talking about maybe being a bit more biased because the rest of the movie is so boring, is that it's kind of like what we were saying about the score. It is this moment of silence where it's just this guy being followed. It's a silent bus ride. And then all of a sudden the gunfire lets out. And it makes it feel like that was all just good tension and build up working up until that moment. It's a very well put together sequence.
It's very effective. And it really sets you off on a high note and you're excited to see what this is. And I think maybe my assumption at this point, before we get into the rest of the movie, is that, this is going to be like a, maybe not a Dirty Harry thing, but like the idea that this person was going to do this again. Like it was going to be like an ongoing, like, so we'd go through maybe Act 1, and then in the start of Act 2, there's a second bus or a second incident where this person's like a continuous threat. But that would give the movie tension and a reason for the cops to like race against the clock to get, to get the things on time. Instead, this is just another way to say meandering, I suppose, which you said a bunch earlier, but like, this movie has zero momentum after this. There is like nothing driving us forward. It is maddening how lackadaisical it is with pacing. It just kind of scene by scene, just kind of goes through things, and it doesn't ever, like, one thing never leads to the next. One thing never feels, oh, there's tension because we have to get to something quickly or we'll lose our chance. There's never anything like that. It's just
yeah, it's what I think the movie is trying to do to give us that sense of not even urgency, but sense of motivation, is that the cop, this was him, we find out very soon after this, he was working after hours, he was working off the books, doing whatever it was he was doing here. And this cop was the partner to Walter Matthau's character. And so he takes it very personally. He wonders what his partner was doing. He wonders, like, what was going on here.
And it's
there is supposed to be this...
Just to jump in, it's a good moment when he discovers, like, because at first they just show up and there's a bus full of dead people and they're treating it very seriously and all that. But there's that moment where he turns the body over and sees him, and there's just this kind of like, oh shit, like, my partner's here. And then, like, as the other cops come on, they all see him, they go, oh shit, it's I don't know what his name was, but Dave, it's Dave. Like,
Yeah. I think that it could work for the sake of his own personal motivation. The problem being is that by the time that later on, he gets home, he talks to his family, he tells his wife about it. And I feel like that's the last time he takes it personally. Every time after that, it's more about just, there's a murder that needs to be solved. I don't care that it's really my partner. It's a murder that needs to be solved.
Yeah, and then for the record, like, when I say it's boring almost instantly, like, to be fair, I think there's a few scenes where it's okay for them to not be momentum yet. Like, I think, just the shock of it happening, I'm sitting outside the bus and, like, not really wanting to talk to his new partner that he's been given, which is Bruce Dern's character. Like, I think, yeah, that's fine. I think him going back to his house and just having these quiet moments where, he talks to his teenage kids a little bit, they leave for school or whatever, and then he just sort of point blank says to the wife, my partner's dead. And and it's very, she doesn't come over and hug him or anything. She's very apologetic. She doesn't react, in a mean way. But we find out quite quickly that they're sleeping in separate rooms. So clearly the marriage is, not in the bed. I mean, they're still living in the same house. They're clearly, they've decided to, like, oh, there's no reason to break up the family. We're happy enough to sort of coexisting like this. But we're not, romantically in love anymore. We're kind of just roommates at this point.
Yeah, you get that vibe when he comes in that he feels like a stranger to his own family. Like, his son just kind of brushes past him. The daughter gives him, like, a 2-word answer of, like, what's going on in school. And then instead of being able to hang out with his wife because he was out doing this all night, he is like, I'm just going to go sleep. And so he just goes into his room and passes out for a while. And it's, again, he checks, there's ever so slightly few tangents where every once in a while he'll bump against something to do with his family. And I like those moments from a development standpoint, but they never take it far enough where I feel like it's actually pushing this into character study territory. It's just another thing that happens.
Yeah, and to be honest, like, because at this point I was thinking, okay, we're setting up his home life, we know what type of, like, problems he has as a cop. Maybe this is something where he's either going to grow and get over this by the end and realize he has to devote more of his time to his family, or it's going to be, leaning towards a French Connection type thing where it's like, no, it's like he's just going to keep going down the rabbit hole and completely abandon them kind of thing by the end. Like, I was expecting one or the other, and the movie does neither. The movie forgets he has a family past a certain point. It does not factor in at all. So, take that for what you will. There's a minor arc with him and his new partner, of course, but that's the most you're going to get out of growth as far as the main characters are concerned in this.
I feel like that arc was like, you think of an arc as an actual, like, curve. You think of it as like, okay, here we go doing whatever. I feel like their partnership, their compassion for each other is a flat line up until about 2/3 in the movie, when then all of a sudden they have this, honest to God, really well done scene where they just kind of, like, explode out at each other. And then from that point on, everything's fine. Like, they're best buddies. And maybe you could view that as, like, actually something that would happen, something that would work out in terms of, he's so emotionally closed off, he needs to just explode out, let it go. But it's such a great scene, but has zero consequence, where it just feels like, okay, well, what was the point of it then?
Well, it's great because of the performances. That's when they really get to act, is that scene where they blow up at each other. But, like, yeah, like, it it's done such a poor job up until that point of making me care about their like relationship as a pair of characters. And then, as you say, there's no consequences afterwards, pretty much. It just feels like, oh, that's just solved everything then. It doesn't work. It doesn't feel satisfying or rewarding. So, yeah, I mean, so they go to the station, the captain sort of like gives them all like, hey, this is what we're going to look at. We want this, I want this solved, blah, blah, blah. The usual sort of shtick, right? And I thought, okay, it's after this, when they leave, where we really start the rest of the movie. When we start the investigation, that's when the movie needs to sort of shift into its next gear, right? Up until now, everything's been fine to slow down, sort of take in the tragedy of the opening scene, how it's affected the main character. But once they're about to leave the station, that's when, okay, it's time, right? This is Lethal Weapon, when Riggs and Murtaugh have left the station and are about to go on their day. That's where we really start building the relationship and you really start building the case they're investigating. And this movie just starts interviewing people, and everyone is more dull than the last, is the best way I can describe it. I suppose the important thing before they leave is that they were looking through his desk, the dead cop's desk, and they find some photographs which are important for the plot. Now, one set of them, or some of them, are of his current girlfriend, which we also get a scene of when Walter Matthau goes and tells her that her boyfriend is dead. And he asks her some questions. And then there's one, though, that is suspiciously of another woman who was a sex worker and was killed a couple of years ago. And this was actually a case that Matthau had, right, before he was partners with this guy, and he couldn't quite crack it. Like, he kind of he thought he knew who it was, but he couldn't prove it. So the whole thing didn't. The phrase he keeps using, I couldn't make him. That's what he keeps saying over and over again, right? And it's like, okay, so why did he have that? He's like, well, I always brought that case up. It was kind of my white whale. I always regretted not having it. I guess he, got it out of the case file or whatever, blah, 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 blah. And that's how it introduces this thing. And this detail is going to be the crux of everything we do in the third act. Like I see, the thing is, when you get to the point where your entire third act's about following your main suspect, the fact that we never see this main suspect until they start following him made me feel like this should have been the start of Act 2. The start of Act 2 should have been tailing this man, and then it can escalate so that by the time we get to Act 3, that's when he's aware that he's being tailed and starts playing a real game of cat and mouse with him. Instead, we don't start doing that until like maybe at best 25 minutes before the end of the movie.
See, I agree with you. I think that it needed restructuring. I would disagree in how it was done. I think the biggest hurdle of this movie is the fact that it feels like they all of a sudden they set up that stuff with the Polaroid, and then they spend an hour away from it. And then all of a sudden, it seems like Walter Matthau's just like, wait a minute, hold on, there was a Polaroid. And then they just immediately hop onto the case. I think what it needed to do was Walter immediately makes this connection. He immediately is just like, wait a minute, this Polaroid is about this old case that I had, this other stuff. But the cases seem completely separate, entirely different on their own. And so he needs to spend time figuring out how they're linked enough in order to justify investigating this guy.
Well, here's the thing. The link between them actually kind of pissed me off.
Yeah.
Because, so the perp that was luring the cop onto the bus in the opening, right, who was shot dead all with the other victims, right? He notably does not have any identification on him, so he's a John Doe. That's what they're referring to him as for the first little while. Fair enough, right?
Yes.
And then later on, much later on, right, where they finally get a name for this guy because they talk to like two different people who give them a name. It turns out to be Gus Niles is this guy's name, and they go to his girlfriend's place, and they find her dead. She's got a needle in her arm. Was this intention? Did she do this to herself accidentally or intentionally, or did someone else do this to her? That's obviously up in the air. Maybe this is someone covering their tracks, whatever. But whilst they're there, Walter Matthau finds a photograph of Niles and someone else. Now, call me crazy. Maybe if we had seen this other person before, and again, if this had happened much earlier in the film, it'd be okay if this was the introduction to who this guy was. But because this is basically the end of Act 2, it feels really weird that we don't know who this is. But Walter Matthau says, oh, this is this guy, Camaro, who was the main suspect in that murder that I couldn't crack 2 years ago. And it's like, wait a minute. You're telling... And here's the other detail, actually, before I start complaining. 2 scenes later, he tells Bruce Dern, oh, this Gus Niles, he served in the military. That's what the photograph was of. It was them as military buddies, right? This suspect from the case and this Niles guy. And he's like, hey, he used to go by a different name. He changed his name to Gus Niles. He had this other name first. Right. And he's like, I mean, you wouldn't believe this. This guy was the main person who gave the suspect, Camaro, his alibi that meant we couldn't crack the case against him in the murder of this prostitute. And I'm like, wait a minute. You were the lead detective on that case. And this was the person who gave the main suspect an alibi. And you didn't know what he looked like? You didn't recognize his body? What?
People change a lot in 10 years. So he went bald.
It was 2. It was 2 years.
Oh, it was 2? Sorry, I don't know why that was 2.
I think it was 2. I'm sure they said 2. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But like, I was like, it was such a hard thing to swallow. And I get that, you know, you've got a team of cops all interviewing. Maybe the initial interviews were someone else. But the idea that the main alibi for his lead suspect, that he was convinced did it, that he never met him, is such a weird, just...
I mean, it doesn't even have to be... Here's the thing. When it comes down to these sort of detectives, and this is the part that is one of those tropes that I feel works for movies. It's something that should be used, is the idea that they are relentless. That they get an idea in their mind and they pursue it. That's kind of what makes them entertaining characters. Maybe it's something they have to be shaken out of. Maybe it's something that they're right about. But regardless, that character trait is what would make them good cops, good detectives. The fact that this guy was given an alibi and then it's just like, all right, guess he's not our guy, and then drop it. It kind of feels like he's not the relentless detective. It feels like he is just a guy who's like, all right, well, give up on that case. But then he spends 2 years talking about it regardless. And it's like, do you care or do you not care? Because it seems like through all of your actions, you don't care. But everything you're saying is like, man, I really wish that the answer... There's one line later on when it's Walter and his partner talking to the captain. The captain says, what, do you just expect the someone to tell you who it was just to land it in your lap? And they're like, yeah, that's usually how it goes. And I'm like, you know, that makes a lot of sense as to how your police work is done, if that's how you see that.
Yeah, and again, even just to add on to what you said, like how much of a, you know, accept no excuses, get the bad guy no matter what kind of cop is he, if, again, he doesn't know the person who gave his suspect an alibi. It feels like someone he would want to speak to himself and maybe poke holes in his argument, or, you know, find out the inconsistencies or something. But yeah, so that kind of drove me nuts. And to go back to the photographs they found from the dead partner, so this actually is what starts the sub or the theme of sex, right? This is like one of its subjects that it wants to talk about. Because when he brings up these photographs to the girlfriend, she basically says, oh, those were just for us. Like, you know, he wasn't taking them because I was, you know, doing anything dodgy. That was just for us because we like doing it. And he doesn't really, I mean, he didn't really say much to, but she kind of gets defensive and says, you know, like, you know, just drop it, you know, it was just for us. And it's just kind of the implication that she's assuming that he's been a prude about it and that this is weird to him. But... you know, he's taken photos of her similar to the prostitute, and the backstory to the prostitute, who was the victim in the previous murder, was that she became the girlfriend of the suspect, Camaro, and then he started pimping her out, and when she realized she liked doing that, which fair play, I guess, she decided to go on her own and do more extreme stuff, like dominatrix stuff and whips and leather, as they describe it.
I think I specifically remember him saying, like, yeah, that girl, before she got involved with Camaro, she was raised in a convent. And I was like, wow, okay, she was that level of pure. Got it.
She was repressed and then unleashed her inner beast, which is all fair enough. And basically the motive for the murder was that Camaro hated that she, like, left him and went on her own, so he killed her for it, right? That was the whole backstory of that.
Yeah. And then the entire rest of the plot is us finding out that because Walter Matthau was talking about the case, his ex-partner, the dead partner, started looking it up, started doing investigation on his own. Also, he's apparently the equivalent of like a true crime podcast listener nowadays. He's just really into sex crimes. That's apparently his thing. So
yeah, the girlfriend
he started investigating.
Yeah, the girlfriend says that. Like, he always talks about sex crimes, like he's obsessed with them, and I'm like, that feels like a red flag. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there.
I'm not saying I wouldn't put it on my Tinder profile, but it wouldn't be the first thing.
So they investigate this stuff, and to go back to the sort of this sort of through line of sex stuff. One of the people that they go into interview is this guy Niles' brother. So the guy who was the perp on the bus that lured him on, he had a brother who runs a sex theater, like a porn theater. Right?
Yeah, but like live girls, but not like a strip club.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because he walks in and has a look at what's on the stage, and this woman's just sort of got her legs up and open, spread eagle, and she's just kind of like...
She's just like shaking. She's like vibrating on a stool.
Gyrating was the word I was going to look for there.
No, I wouldn't call that gyrating, but fair.
But she's sort of just gyrating her crotch. We don't see the crotch. We just sort of see it from like behind, like over the shoulder, if you will. But she's just kind of like gyrating her bits at the audience. It's kind of strange. So here's a question.
Yep.
Admittedly, in your delirious fever state, you might not have clocked this more than I did, or less than I did.
Okay.
But like a teenager walks in who's about 15. Is this his son, or is it just someone who looks and reminds him of his son?
That is his son. I am like... Here's the thing. I actually got a problem with that because...
To be clear, we're talking about Walter Matthau's son. Like, so he's here to interview this guy, and he catches his 15-year-old son walking into this like weird sex performance theater.
Yeah. And rather than call his son out or like get him arrested or whatever, he uses that as leverage to get answers. Because the guy's not forthcoming, so he goes back there. He's like, I could shut you down. You got a 15-year-old kid in there right now. He's like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I'll totally answer your questions.
Yeah.
But the reason I have a problem with it is because much later on in the movie, and we'll get to it, but much later on in the movie, there is another shooting event. And there is 2 kids caught in the crossfire. And I swear to God, one of them looks completely identical to the son, like wearing the same clothing as well. And so I thought, like, oh no, this is going to be his breakdown of a character. This is him going to be like, oh, my child was, I was so unattentive to their life. He got caught in the middle of all this. How could I be so blind? But it turns out no, because he literally walks up and like looks at it and doesn't mind at all. So I guess that's just one of those face blindness things with me potentially. But I swear he looked completely identical.
No, that's fair. I don't think I clocked that, but I believe you. So from here, like, you know, there's again more things to do with sex throughout. There's talking about the subject. It comes up in a couple of different ways, and then it kind of pivots at a certain point into being about being gay. Because one of the things that they basically deduce once they're following the suspect Camaro in the last like half hour of the movie is that, and they use a lot of harsher language than I'm about to use, but they basically think he's gay because he keeps going to, like, you know, the gay bar. He seems to be taking men home, which I don't know what they're trying to suggest with the backstory with him killing the prostitute. Like, was that like he's in denial and he's killing the woman who like abandoned him because she was meant to be his cover for being gay? So I don't know. It feels like it's maybe suggesting something nefarious is all I'm saying.
Yeah, this strikes me as the sort of thing that like was in the original novel and it was expanded upon. It makes a lot more sense there. But like here, it's just kind of truncated down. It's like, oh yeah, no, the villain was gay because we're the 70s and we want to villainize that a little bit.
Yeah, so they follow him, like Bruce Dern follows him, because Walter Matthau can't follow him because he knows his face from the investigation. Much like how Walter Matthau should know the main alibi person's face, you know, because he investigated that crime. Don't pull on that
string, Pete. It doesn't work out for you.
But Bruce Dern goes into this gay bar where the suspect is, and the suspect's over talking to a strapping young lad in his best leather hat. Do you know what's funny though? It made me think of the running gag in Police Academy where they send people to the Blue Oyster bar. I think that's what it's called. Yes. And it's like a running joke where like they send like the bully characters there, and then like it's like they're trapped and the gay men dance with them all night. I could almost hear the music that always played in that that joke as this scene was playing out. Anyway, so the camera cuts around. There's like strippers on stage, and they're wearing like just the tightest little underwear. I think there's actually one person who's basically got like a napkin just over his crotch. There's like nothing at the sides. So it's like, hey, this is what a gay bar is like, and it's all very raunchy, and everyone's dancing. There's drag queens sitting around, and like
it obviously doesn't work in a modern sense humor anymore, but I did kind of like the Bruce Dern line where he's sitting in this bar and he wants to go out and talk to Walter Matthau. So he turns to a drag queen next to him and says, "Hey fella, can you hold my chair?" And the drag queen gets so offended by being called fella. It's just like, how dare you?
Yeah. That feels like a bit of a landmine.
Absolutely.
In the modern day.
I just liked her reaction to it. By the way, I did look up quotes on IMDb, and there was an exchange. I heard these lines, but only seeing them written did I actually clock what it was saying. So they go out and, of course, using much harsher language, they said, "I think he's gay. Things are looser now. A couple years ago, that was enough to ruin you." And then Bruce Dern continues, "Do you think Teresa found out about him and then didn't know which way to turn?" So I think the implication here is that Teresa left him and was going to out him as gay, which would have ruined him at the time. And that's why she was killed.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I remember that exchange. But I'll be honest, though, that last part, though, that really implied that she didn't know which way to look, that was one of many lines that Bruce Dern said that, I'll be honest, Bruce Dern repeatedly in this movie ends a phrase or a thought with the sentence, "You know what I mean." And there was at least 3 times where he said that in this movie where I legitimately went, "No, I don't, Bruce. I don't know what you mean. I have no idea what you're implying with what you just said." And this strikes me as kind of fitting into that mold where, like, I don't think I quite got what he meant by the end of that speech. I definitely remember them talking about how, this would have ruined you a couple of years ago, and this is all out in the open now, kind of thing. But yeah, and it is San Francisco, which is kind of seen as kind of one of the places that kind of
more accepting.
We sort of drove forward the idea of being like out and proud and all that stuff, and the thing is, though, is that it's turned its villain, who's willing to murder entire busloads of innocent people, into a gay character, which does kind of feel a little skeevy to me.
Yeah, it'd be one thing if like he were still super deeply closeted, because then it's like the wrestling with yourself sort of idea. But the fact that between the murder to now, he's now completely comfortable going out in broad daylight to these gay clubs kind of feels like a pivot that doesn't make any sense anymore. Well,
it makes me think of like a rightfully critiqued trope, even though some of the movies that are guilty of it are well-made movies that are entertaining thrillers, and I'm sure we'll get to some of them down the line in other seasons. But the trope of like the killer or the villain being someone who cross-dresses or is trans, right? That idea of that's like, it's actually kind of weird that that's came up like multiple times in movies over however many decades. And this kind of feels like it's fitting into that sort of like lane for me, where we're not talking about that specifically, but this just kind of feels like, the gay people might be crazy and they might be dangerous, and this is the sort of thing that might happen. And it all comes from the fact that he was hiding that he was gay, so that's why this is dangerous, kind of thing. You know?
It's a very easy shorthand to make your villainous by putting them in the group of the other. The problem being is that what was the other back then is no longer the other now, and it feels a lot more troublesome because of it.
Yeah. So it just, it kind of, it feels dated in that sense, I guess.
Yeah.
With its attitude towards it. And obviously, you can't have a gay person be the villain. There's definitely ways that you can and should do it. If you said that a gay person could never be the villain in something, then that would be equally discrimination as to saying they can never be the hero in something. So, it just doesn't,
it shouldn't feel like it is using that as a justification as to why they are villainous.
Yes.
And it feels like that's kind of what this movie is doing here.
Yeah, it's doing, hey, isn't it creepier because he's a gay killer? That's basically what it's doing. So
absolutely.
that rubs me the wrong way. That's a thing. I guess we should. I mean, that other shooting scene you brought up, where it's got nothing to do with the case, it's got nothing to do with the killer. It's just someone's taking hostage. It's like a scene that would be in the middle of a RoboCop movie, where RoboCop's going down the police car. Like,
it was a scene in the middle of a RoboCop movie.
We've got a hostage situation. This crazy man is taking 2 hostages in this apartment, and he's firing guns out the window at the police that are all assembled now. And I don't know why this was here.
So,
just they thought the movie was boring, so they're going to put an action sequence in the middle.
Yeah. So that's the thing. This takes place exactly in the middle. This is smack dab in the middle of the movie, and I absolutely believe it is from the viewpoint of there is no action since the gunning down scene at the beginning. There will be no action until the car chase at the end. We need something to keep the audience engaged here in the middle. The only thing that I think they could have woven into the story, and I think would have been a much more interesting ticking clock element, something for urgency, is that the police captain basically says, this guy is our shooter until we can get a better perp. We have to put somebody out to the public as the bus shooter. And so we're going to take this guy and basically say he's the one who did it. And Walter Matthau's like, he's not our perp. He doesn't fit the stuff. He's not what visually was described. So clearly that would give a little bit of rubbing him the wrong way in terms of how the system works and blah, blah, blah. But I like this idea of them being under public scrutiny, of the reason that they need to get this solved quickly is because the public is outraged and they're scared and they need to know that this has been taken care of. But the longer that it waits, the more and more trouble that they're going to get in from City Hall saying, where's our murderer? You should have found him by now.
Yeah. It's there for that one bit. I don't think the movie even, it doesn't keep it around. It just completely disappears, so that it never feels like an ongoing concern. Honestly, everything, the captain says, hey, drop this, don't look into this Camaro stuff, because that's the last time we really see the captain, is when they go to him and say, hey, I think it's connected to this murder case. It's like, oh, you fool, you've got nothing concrete for this is all a bunch of nonsense. Go and investigate proper things and do actual police work. And it's like, okay, obviously they're going to go do this, and this is when they have their big blow up, the 2 partners, where it's like, you didn't even show me the photograph, you just showed the captain that proves that this is connected. You didn't even explain this to me. How am I supposed to work with you if you don't trust me, if you don't let me in, let me know what the plan is, and so on. And he's like, but I need your help, I need you to follow the bad guy because he knows my face. So it's kind of funny because it's like, well, you're not having an arc here because you've learned anything or because you realize you do have to trust your partner. You basically just need him to do something, so you're just kind of letting him have his moan, letting him complain, so that he'll just do the thing you want him to do. He's still kind of just using him as a tool, ultimately, for most of this.
It feels like Bruce Dern has, and again, it's iffy as to whether or not I would say I felt this the whole movie, but it's implied throughout the whole movie he's just trying to get into Walter Matthau's good graces. He's just trying to get on his good side and say, yeah, I'm willing to work with you. I want to be a good partner here. We can make this work, but you gotta give me some give. And Walter Matthau's like, okay, I will give you the smallest bit of leash in that I need your help on something. And Bruce Dern's like, I'll take it, whatever. I'm in. We're best buds now.
Yeah. And then we start following a character that we've heard named a couple times about this old crime. Honestly, everything about the way they bring up this old murder case that is actually what they're really solving at the end of the movie more than anything is just kind of asinine to me, because by the time we get to it, I'm like, yeah, but we saw the bus thing. The bus thing was exciting and scary, and it feels like, again, the idea that he makes strike again would be a great thing to be hanging over all this, just to give it some tension, some time constraints. But no, it just kind of feels like, oh no, this is more about solving the murder from years ago. That happens to also solve the partner's murder. It feels very happenstance, and then the actual following him around is, it's like he comes out of the building, he goes into his building.
No, this entire stakeout session, I'm looking at the scroll bar. I see we're in the last 20 minutes. I know that we're building up to the end here, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels like we're just doing another thing like we have been doing for the rest of this movie.
I legitimately checked how much time was left, and there was like 12 minutes left, and it still didn't feel like we were building to an ending. And I couldn't believe. And obviously, once like the chase happens, which basically just kind of comes out of relative nowhere, in the sense that it's not because we build to something. It's not because like, oh, there's a game of cat and mouse because the guy knows he's been followed, so he tries to do a couple of smart things. You know, honestly, it's very easy to think of the French Connection here, because that movie had a whole sequence where Gene Hackman is following the bad guy, and the bad guy knows he's been followed, so he tries to do all these smart little tricks to outwit him. That movie has multiple great chase scenes. This one, it just kind of, at a certain point, he's like, you know, he gets on a bus when he knows he's been followed, and obviously, the tension is, oh, is he going to do the thing? He's going to, you know, do this again. But it's too little too late, I think.
Yeah, there's one little bit before this, which I found particularly annoying, which is they're following him around. They're waiting for him to like screw up or do something, do anything for them to book him on. And so Walter Matthau presents the idea of that Polaroid from before, that picture that we had before. I'm going to have you deliver that to him, and knowing that that picture is out there will shake him up enough that he'll do something crazy. So be it, fine enough plan. But then they have a good 2 to 3 minutes of them just sitting around talking about how long it's taking him to react to this. And it's like, just do it. Why are we trying to pad this out at this point? Just have him do whatever it is he's going to do and then get over with it. And he does eventually like peel out. He's now paranoid. Like you said, he knows he's being followed. He tries to lose his tail. So it turns into an action sequence, but that little middle bit there where it says, I'm forcing the end, and then us actually getting to the final is the most aggravating section for me, because it feels like we're padding this for no reason.
Yeah, and obviously Walter Matthau gets on the bus, and it's like, oh, he's on the bus, the killer's there, he's got his bag with him, he's going to start taking out his gun. It's like, okay, we're teasing what happened at the start of the movie, and I'm like, you really could have had this like throughout the whole thing. This could have been something that really built to, and he's doing it. And obviously the difference here is that Walter Matthau knows that he's dangerous, knows that he might try and pull a gun, so he's kind of like waiting. And the whole thing is that Bruce Dern's in the car trying to keep up with the bus, and at one point an identical second bus pops out, and he's like, oh, which one is it? And then he's like, oh, I need to get around this one to get to that one. The big climax though is that when the killer pulls out his gun, he aims it at the back of Walter Matthau, who for some reason is not looking in his direction right now. Bruce Dern luckily sees this through the window and shoots him through the window, which makes Walter Matthau turn around, pull out his gun, and fire at him as well, and they take down the bad guy. It's done. You know, and that's basically it, right? You know, they come over, check his body, and the movie ends with him arriving back at the station and being told that the captain wants to see them, and he's probably pissed.
And there was one earlier plot point where this mustache cop came up and said, hey, turns out one of the guys who was shot at the beginning of the movie that was only injured, he was actually speaking German, and he was actually giving us a description of what this guy kind of looked like, which was whoever. And then the end of the movie is him bringing in a suspect who looks kind of like that guy, and they're like, all right, cool, but we don't need him anymore. And they just walk off. Like, that's the end. That's what we end on.
It feels like it's trying to make a point, but I don't know what the point is.
For me, it feels more like a comedy beat. For me, it feels it
is a comedy beat for sure.
Yeah, but like, it's such an unfunny beat. It's such like a, okay, well, sure, why not? And it's just the capper to the rest of the movie. And again, we described the main plot. We described the primary stuff. There is a bunch of other stuff of like this dude that they initially interview who comes back once or twice, and he's just kind of more on the seedy side of things. They keep on following this guy named Rodney and trying to figure out who he is and like how he's related to all this. Yeah. There's a section where there's a prostitute who's being beaten up by a pimp, and they threaten the pimp or else they're going to attack him again. And there's so many other little subplots that do nothing for the story.
Yeah, there's also they go and interview someone at a prison as well, and so they get one of the names at one point. The pimp one is actually where some of the race stuff comes into it, because the black cop sort of shoos the white cop away and says, "Let me talk to him. I'll try and speak to him, kind of one-on-one." And it's like, okay, I can see what you're kind of trying to do here, but it never builds to anything. It never becomes a factor later in the movie. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Like, see, it'd almost be like if you try to bring in all these things, like the idea of like feeling taboo about any of the sex stuff and acting like those are others, acting like gay people are others, acting like people of a different race are others. Maybe if there was a point at the end where like the main characters have to like sort of realize, or maybe an ongoing theme of how all these divides are causing so much harm because they're leading to crimes in different ways. Maybe there'd be some sort of point to it, but I legitimately don't feel like any of these build into each other or build to any kind of larger point other than just, hey, all these things exist, so, and we address them all.
Look at us, we're topical. No, there's honestly, there are a few of them that I feel like are just non sequiturs. Like the editor messed up. There's one in specific that I had to rewind just to make sure I did not skip ahead or something. Like I didn't accidentally fast forward by 15 seconds, where Walter and Bruce are crossing the street to get into a car. They're talking about whatever with the case. We then cut to a larger woman, topless, posing for a painting. And Bruce Dern is saying something about like, oh man, this is some messed up stuff. And then we cut back to them crossing the street to get into a car again. I don't think we did a single thing at this location, but like, we're here. We did something.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that moment because understandably
it doesn't do anything for the plot. Not a single thing.
Yeah. Honestly, it's a kind of a tedious one to get through. And it's just that thing where like, okay, you give it a little bit of leeway as it's starting to spin up its gears, assuming it was spinning up some gears, which it really wasn't, but you think it's going to. And then about the half-hour mark, I think, is where I went, oh, this might be really dull and not good.
It's the 25-minute mark is where the captain says, okay, get out there, everyone do your investigations or whatnot.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, now we can start doing something. And then it goes another 5 minutes of nothing happening. And you're like, okay, never mind. We're stuck here.
Yes. So sadly, not super positive. And it's like, obviously the production value and the performances are strong enough that it doesn't feel like some piece of crap either. Like it's it does feel like it fits into what a 70s thriller looks and feels like for sure. It just has all these other problems. Much of it is the script, really. Like the script and like how it handles its story, how it builds to its climax, all those things are mostly the script. Because I think it's well enough directed for the scenes we get where there is direction to be, noticed and enjoy what it's doing with how it's presenting the characters. But like, the everything that's happening is so dull for the majority of the runtime. It's just impossible to give a shit about any of it.
And I don't think that neither of the cops laughed a single time throughout the entire movie. So false advertising as well. There were no laughing policemen.
Very good. All right, David, what are you rating The Laughing Policeman out of 10?
I wish I could come up with anything as like a justification, because I want to like hedge my bets. I want to say, well, at least this movie has X, Y, and Z. But honestly, this movie doesn't even have that. This movie has a solid intro, and that's about it. There's nothing else that's really in this that I think garners it any extra points. So it's not an awfully made movie. It's just so dull and boring. I gotta say it's at least I'm gonna say a 4. It's just, I can't, I think it's that low mainly from the viewpoint of, I can't see myself suggesting this movie. Like there's no way I could tell anyone, sit down and check out this movie. And it's not from a bad quality perspective. It's just nothing worth watching.
Yeah, it still seems a little harsh for me. And I know I gave this, if you watch the written rundown, you'll see what I give the story and script. But it feels a little harsh to me just because at least the production value and the acting is at such a level that it still feels like a real movie in a way that a 3 out of 10 or a 4 out of 10 doesn't feel to me.
Right.
So I'm still tempted to give it the 5 and say that it's like, it's thoroughly mediocre because it's so goddamn boring. There's obviously a strong intro. There's arguably some strong stuff at the end. Good performances, but absolutely, like, and I hate saying this about any movie really, but do something else. Like, watch the first 10 minutes and then do something else for the next hour as it's on in the background. Loosely pay attention because nothing important is going to happen until you get past the hour 15 mark or whatever it is.
Yeah, I'd say even deeper. Yeah.
So,
I mean, every once in a while you can glance over and see some boobs, but that's about it.
Yes. Anyway, there you go. There's the ratings.
Does it make the cut, Pete?
No, of course it doesn't make the cut.
That's fair. I wouldn't put it at cut your losses level. I think that's a bit too low, but it is definitely cut from the collection.
Yeah. It's such a shame because I wasn't that hot in Long Goodbye. It didn't quite click with me, and I was hoping this would be like, oh, we found a fun gem that I'm going to like more than that, and I ended up disliking it even more, which is a shame. Yep. So, hey, it is what it is. But of course, next week we're still doing 70s thriller season, and we're going back to Gene Hackman because we're doing Night Moves. So that is what's coming up next week on the show. We also have the Atomic Cinema Experiment going, our sci-fi movie podcast, which with both of us as well. We just did the Bruce Willis movie Surrogates. So it's
I just to give the audience an idea here. I looked at her schedule and saw Surrogates listed there, and I thought to myself, I don't remember what movie that was. And then you said Bruce Willis. I'm like, oh right, that one.
Yeah, so it's a week of quality here.
Yep.
In fact, and I'm not. Well, we've not done it yet, but I'm not expecting high quality from the Screams movie this week either. The horror movie podcast that I did with Tim. So yeah, week of quality on Male Fuzz movies. But yeah, let us know what you thought of the movie if you've seen it in the comments, all that usual stuff. Of course, though, you can support us over at patreon.com/MaleFuzzTV or via YouTube membership and get access to our monthly exclusive show Extra Reels, where we review some of the worst movies ever made. You also get access to the ratings rundown for both this and the Ace, where we do like extra categories, including the very, very coveted Sexual Tension Award. And I keep trying to think of other silly awards to throw in there so it's not just dry number stuff. I'll think of a couple of funny ones soon, don't you worry. But we do that for all the episodes now, and there's back catalogues of other things we used to do and whatever. So if you want to support the show and help keep it coming, all the shows that is, then you can support us financially in any of those ways. But anyway, that's the show. That's been the Collector's Cut. Thank you very much for joining us. This probably has been one of the shortest episodes we've ever done. I'd have to go back and check and see if there's any other shorter ones. But that's the show. We'll see you next time. Keep watching movies. And if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity.